welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Tamsin.
Time for the papers this morning. Let's have a look at the front of the Sun. The partner of Nicola Bulley has spoken out and says he fears someone is keeping secret what really happened to her.
The Times reports learn work skills or face benefits cuts. Jobless told universal credit payments could be lost.
The Guardian has Tories plotting a childcare giveaway as proposals to expand free childcare could be offered at the next election.
In the Express, King Charles wants an answer from son Harry about whether he'll be attending the coronation.
And the Star says that the sun is falling to bits as boffins, as it says, say a large chunk has fallen off. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Not quite. Don't panic.
No, there was a bit of a call them coronal mass ejections, CMEs. And there was a big coronal mass ejection, and then it's gone into a vortex essentially around the North Pole of the Sun. It's fascinating. But it's not falling off. It's not falling to...
It's a headline for you, isn't it?
It's a great headline, but it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's go through the papers now with author Ella Whelan and the writer and journalist Andy Jones. Morning to you both. Ella, let's have a look at... I mean, we've been covering it in our headlines, actually, but the Guardian's gone quite big on the protests in Liverpool.
Yes, this hasn't made it into any of the papers, but this is from the Guardian online because it happened so late last night. And, quite hard to find out what actually happened, particularly with, any of these stories that are broadcast on social media. But anyway, it seems like there was a group of people who turned up outside a hotel in Knowsley near Liverpool protesting against, because of, spurred on by a social media post that had claimed that there was people, asylum seekers inside the hotel who were living on feather beds or some kind of form of that. That was the post that said basically living.
What does this mean, feather? Does it just mean luxury?
It just means living. As far as I can understand, it's just hard to figure out what actually was said. But as it seems like they were complaining that they were living in luxury in this hotel, and therefore people turned up to protest outside Knowsley as one of the poorest places in the UK. The Guardian is reporting that it was a group of far-right protesters, and that's something that's also been sort of echoed across social media. There was an allegation that it was organised by the group Patriotic Alternative, who was founded by the old leader of the British Nationalist Party, so an extreme far-right white nationalists, very kind of horrible group.
We don't know if that was true.
No, they have denied it. Patriotic Alternative have denied it online. So there's just all this stuff flying around. Who knows who actually called the protest, whether it was spontaneous, who knows whether or not it was far-right. I mean, there has been no sort of conclusive evidence of banners claiming that it's a particular kind of group or anything like that. But anyway, what did happen was that people living inside the hotel were fairly being housed inside the hotel at the moment, probably had a bad night. There was a burning police van and there was lots of protests. But it opens up this kind of discussion about, there is a debate to be had about a government policy that, as some people have described online, dumps people in hotels for, unending periods in parts of the country that are particularly poor, and sort of enrages tensions with communities who are being told by a government, you don't have enough money for better pay, we don't have enough money for better resources, go away, there's no money left. And then there seems to be resources for people, for asylum seekers. And those of us who want to live in a civilised society would hope that those two don't come into conflict, and you don't blame refugees for the failure of a government. But this is a result of government policy that just seems to be tone deaf to how people, working class people feel in these communities and what the consequence is going to be of these kind of actions.
You can understand the frustration. You can certainly understand the frustration. It's how we respond to that frustration.
Exactly.
I think it started peacefully, didn't it? But then got out of control, and police presence upping itself there. Andy, let's look to the Times, shall we? Learn work skills or face benefits cut, the jobless at all.
Yeah, so front page on the Times, universal credit claimants have been told to attend a 2-week face-to-face sessions every day for 2 weeks, or prepare to lose their universal credits. What's interesting about this story, obviously there's 1.2 million unemployed in this country, 9 million of us are neither in a job or looking for work. I'm not sure whether that includes people of pensionable age as well, but essentially they're saying that in certain areas, they're targeting Glasgow, Pontefract, Colville and Crawley initially to roll out this scheme, but they're going to give people return to work sessions every day for 2 weeks. What's interesting, he didn't say what these sessions involve. Is this a bit of learning Microsoft Excel? Is this learning how to use PowerPoint? Is this learning how to use Zoom? Is this learning how to make a decent cup of tea for the boss? There's no detail about what these sessions actually involve. But apparently if you don't turn up to these sessions, you do risk potentially losing your universal
Fair enough,
credit.
isn't it?
I certainly think that people who are looking for work should be given the opportunity to get new skills. You certainly think that if people are looking for work, they welcome new skills. I think one of the difficulties that the government has got is there's people who are persistently not looking for work. There's people who will not get work, and I think that they're using what they consider to be a carrot and a stick approach here.
And maybe one size fits all might not work, you know.
No.
Training for everybody.
Yeah, this isn't. So they're also saying they're not applying this to people who are self-employed, who are temporarily on universal credit, or people who've got strong career backgrounds who temporarily happen to be out of work. I think there's an issue of people who lack the skills to go back to the modern workplace, which, as we talked about earlier, is rapidly changing with work from home, all of these different products.
Well, you know, what have you got to lose by going on these courses?
Well, if the courses were, as Andy described, you know, very, you know, practical skills, like whether it's, you know, retraining in some kind of industry or IT training or anything like that, would be great. But anybody who's been to one of these sort of, it used to be JSA when I knew it, but, you know, universal credit meetings, is you go, you know, you sit in front of someone who doesn't want to be there, and they sort of talk to you about, you know, have you done your CV, and, you know, what are your skills like? And it's a waste of time. It's a pointless waste of time. So, you know, if this was something that actually would benefit people and give them the confidence and the ability to, you know, because there's this sort of...
But they're saying here learn work skills.
Yeah,
there
can be a bit of a myth, which is, you know, that sort of, there are just lots of people in the UK endless people who just want to sit on their backsides and do nothing. Actually, lots of people want to have the social aspect of going into work. You know, there are lots of benefits to going into work, not just earning money, but also, you know, getting out of the house and being someone in the world.
Yeah.
So anything that can encourage that and actually give people a beneficial thing rather than just... You know, I remember we were here, you know, maybe a month ago, and we were covering a story that the Labour Party said that job centre officials, you know, the new scheme was that job centre officials were going to meet people in cafes because that was so much more approachable. You know, that's pointless. But actually, you know, maybe putting someone on an Excel course or something, that'd be quite good.
Yeah, good quality course.
I don't know. I'm all for it. I know it's not an exact comparison, but when I wanted to move on to an insulin pump, which the NHS provide, rather than having to inject manually. And they cost a fair bit of money to start with, so the impact on health is phenomenal. But they won't just put you on one. You have to go on something called a Daphne course, which is so I had to take 5 days leave from work and attend this course every day for 5 days. Otherwise, you don't get what you want. If you don't want to do the course, you don't get the equipment. And that's, I think, fair enough.
It will be one way of spotting people who literally don't want to go to work at all costs. If you can't turn up to, I suppose, free sessions, the government will use the argument of, look, if you're not willing to go to work, if you don't turn up to these sessions. But it is every day for 2 weeks as well, which, again, we were talking about childcare earlier. If you're unemployed and have childcare needs, how are you going to be able to go Monday to Friday, I assume, every day for 2 weeks? It then becomes difficult in other ways.
Let's have a look at TikTok, Ella, in the Telegraph.
Yeah, so, you know, you often hear stories about certain posts being banned on social media, and they're always, you know, even though I think that there should be free speech and they shouldn't be banned, they're usually quite outlandish things. This was a podcast from The Telegraph, Planet Normal podcast, with Lincoln.
Oh, right. Oh, it's their own. No wonder they're covering it.
Well, yeah. And Alison Pearson, who were talking with a scientific journalist about the effects of the mRNA vaccine and, you know, whether or not there was a link with heart attacks and that kind of thing. It was a mainstream podcast in a mainstream publication that TikTok has taken down because of, you know, it's presumably it thinks that it's dangerous because it's anti-vax. Number one, the podcast isn't anti-vaccine. And number two, there is a real problem with, you know, if you know, free speech and all of that online, but also for those of us who are you know, pro-vaccine and pro-science and want, or, you know, think all these kind of innovations are brilliant, the one thing that's going to cause conspiratorial outlook is saying, don't talk about it. It's saying, no, you know, shut up about that, that's not allowed. That's what leads people down into the, oh, there must be something to this kind of mentality.
As long as, I mean, I haven't heard it, but presumably whoever was questioning the scientists was challenging the scientists in a journalistic way.
And also we know, you know, again, even those of us who very much support the vaccine and can see what good it did throughout, you know, saving lives throughout the pandemic, know that there is instances of, you know, like with any kind of medical treatment, there will be side effects and there are things like that, which if you are pro-science and pro the exploration of an investigation into science, you must always be open to those things and tell the truth to people and say, here's the thing, here are the risks, here are the benefits, and we suggest that you make this decision and be open about it.
Yeah.
I think the thing with TikTok, I mean, they monitor other things, do they? You know, harmful content. I mean, my daughter has just started on TikTok. It's a huge headache. She seems to have access to all sorts of content. So you monitor this, but not other things that I would argue are actually far more serious.
Absolutely. We've seen instances of children watching suicide videos on TikTok and then killing themselves. There's a story in the news as well today about children self-diagnosing that they've got ADHD, autism, or whatever other kind of mental health illness, purely from things they've seen on TikTok. And the other question about TikTok is, of course, it's basically owned by the Chinese government. We're terrified about Chinese spy surveillance, hot air balloons or whatever drifting over the country. But we do absolutely nothing at all about children downloading a product that's in the family home and then they can be watched by whoever. There's very little data controls on it, etc. And it's completely impossible in many ways to police content that people are constantly uploading.
Yeah.
It's 10, 20-second videos beamed from anywhere in the my at any time.
Mind you, I have to say, the bits I've ever seen on TikTok, I don't know why you bother.
Cat videos.
I mean,
although you say
stuff.
that my son knows about the earthquake. He's quite young. He hasn't got TikTok. And I said, how did you know about that? It was on Monday. Oh, because it's on TikTok. So you get news as well. GBNEWS on
Well, yes, GBNEWS is on TikTok, yes. But, I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, I'm nearly 50. No.
You don't need an account.
I don't
do
TikTok.
it.
What are McYobs, Andy?
McYobs, McDonald's in Bournemouth is applying to the local council to be able to play classical music to soothe the savage beast. Apparently there has been groups of antisocial behaviour in Bournemouth and they believe that one way to scare away the youth is outside the building is to play classical music. This has actually been, it isn't a new idea because in Brixton, as you know, someone who's lived in South London, they've played classical music there for quite a long time to stop people sort of hanging around in the concourse, to sort of soothe, you know, behaviour.
It
is quite nice. You walk into Brixton, it's quite a chaotic high street, lots of vibrancy and noise and people selling things on the street, and then you walk into this concourse and it's just a little bit of Beethoven or Liszt or Chopin or something like that, and I find it quite nice.
What is other kids meant to sort of hear this wonderful music and go, and run away?
Scream.
Or are they meant to turn into sort of lovely young cultures? Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily that they're going to run away. Maybe they'll run away, but also I think it's just the noise of the music is quite soothing, calming. It's difficult to have a punch-up to classical music, isn't it?
Change the pace, maybe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Changes the pace.
Nice soundtrack. I quite like that idea, but then I'm old enough to like a bit of classical music now. Thank you both, Ella. Andy, we'll catch you with you a little bit later on.